I would like to call to order the special meeting of the D303 School Board on Thursday, May 11th, 2023. Ms. Marsan, would you please take the roll call? It is currently 6 p.m.
Yes, Mrs. Barker. Here. Mrs. Bell. Here. Mr. Kuchert.
Here.
Mr. Lackner.
Here.
Mrs. McCabe.
Here.
Mr. McNally.
Here.
And Mrs. Fairgrave.
Here, please stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, moving to section 2 of the agenda, we do have some citizen comments this evening. Mrs. McCabe, would you please read the statement?
During the public comment period, members of the public body who wish to speak are asked to first state their name and community in which they reside. Each individual will have up to 3 minutes to address the board on a topic of their choosing. We ask all individuals who address the board to do so with respect and civility towards others. Please note that personnel matters are sensitive and confidential. We also want to inform our speakers that all regular, special, and committee meetings are live streamed and available for viewing at any time on the district's YouTube channel. Personal information should be considered before making a statement that will be recorded and made public. While the board will not respond to today's public comment during this meeting, we are committed to listening to you to help support our work for the district and on behalf of our students, staff, family, and community members. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I would like to invite our first citizen forward, and I apologize in advance if I mispronounce your last names. It would be Ruth Kuzmanik. Oh, thank you.
I've been here many a time as I observe for League of Women Voters, but I am not here tonight in that capacity. I'm here as a constituent. I do live in St. Charles D303. My youngest did go through District 303. I lived in Batavia prior to that because it was closer to my work. I'm a retired educator from Naperville on 203. I spent 36 years there, middle school and high school. I currently substitute. I have had the pleasure of subbing in this building with Compass and was here for the discussion on Compass. And if you haven't been in during the day to see what Compass does, you guys should get in and see it. It's an amazing, amazing program that a lot of districts are trying to emulate. As I subbed today at Naperville North and spent time in the Community Resource Center where kids check their phones in and interact with each other. Imagine that for the period. And it's by choice that they show up. I also cut through the Wellness Center, which is named after a former coworker of mine, Mr. Mazzarella, who died of brain cancer. And it's the Mazzarella Resource Center. You go in there and kids are in there because they need some SEL support. And I know you know that acronym, so I'll let that go. So I am here to just in this moment, as you guys say your, what is it you're swearing in, to say thank you for doing what you do. And you have some very difficult decisions coming up in the next few months here in terms of money and finances and programs. Please do not be swayed by so much of the people that come up here and want that. Do the right thing for kids and we'll all be happy with you. So thank you for doing what you do.
Thank you. Our next citizen comment is from Frank Bogner.
You for giving me the time. Appreciate it. My name is Frank Bogner. I'm from Geneva, Illinois, and I'm started attending your meetings. And now I'm speaking to you as a grandparent of students here in the St. Charles School District. I'm a retired teacher, coach, high school principal, central office administrator, and adjunct professor at the university level. I believe my background and experience gives me an informed opinion about what is occurring in our schools for my granddaughters. I really started attending the meetings and paying attention when I called your district with questions regarding locker room and restroom usage and my granddaughters. It took 5 phone calls to 3 different levels of administration to get an answer. The lack of transparency and willingness to speak to me by 2 of the 3 administrators signaled to me that my concerns were real. I wanted to speak to you tonight as you welcome the new board and ask that you be reflective and intentional as you do your important work in the next few years. I respect your commitment and sacrifice. Having sat in hundreds of board meetings, I understand what happens. I've heard and read the slogan or battle cry, good to great, multiple times in the past year. Every new superintendent needs a catchphrase to capture the audience, and this is as good as any. I've read the book Good to Great about 15 years ago. I understand its leadership and implications for this organization. One of the main tenets of the book, from my perspective, is the hedgehog concept. What is the one big thing? The thing we're striving to be the best at. It should be clear for a school district, educating students, teaching and learning. Citizenship, patriotism, preparing students for success in the future through current learning challenges. Is it your core concept? Has a disproportionate amount of your attention, commitment, and resources been hijacked by current ideologies, and I would contend have nothing to do with student achievement? Where do our resources go? What are we most passionate about? I've witnessed multiple presentations about test score concerns. Admirable. Obviously, that's a core focus. But as an example of not sticking to the main focus and diverting resources from it, my junior high granddaughter told me of an exercise in science class for 30 minutes where they made a poster with markers about sadness. It was apparently part of the social and emotional learning curriculum. This curriculum, as with all curriculum, is board approved. Do you know what's being taught and in what format? Sticking to the focus in a core subject area? I think not. So please constantly review through the superintendent what our schools and curricula are doing if we really want to be great. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Okay, moving forward in the agenda, this is a night of a lot of celebrations. And so we'll kick off with our first one. Before we seat the new board and take our oath of office, we very much collectively as a current board would like to honor and recognize Jillian Barker for her service on the board for the last 4 years. She has served in a variety of capacities. She has held the role from an officer standpoint of secretary. She held a role as president of the board as well, and has been an active participant even just as not even or just, but as a board member. So with that, I would like to personally thank you. And go ahead.
Going around the circle.
Sure.
So Jillian, you and I are the last two standing from the previous election at 4 years ago, and we did not know each other. And actually the campaign kind of pitted us against each other, but on election night, we were both at Riverside watching the results. And that was the first time we really had talked. But one of the things I don't think people recognize, and I didn't until I came on the board, is how critical the relationships are between board members. The way we communicate with each other, the way we respect and trust each other. And I know for a fact that I really treasure the relationship that you and I have built. We started CAC on our own. We muddled through a lot to do what we really believed was important for the district and for the board. I have watched you lead with your quiet, calm way when there are 400 to 500 people storming the building. I've watched you give us information about special education that was critical to some of our decisions, your knowledge about curriculum. And I have to say, I was thrilled the other night at L&T when you cheered for the reading series that we adopted. I will miss you. I will miss your knowledge and your expertise. But I am looking forward to when we can have an adult beverage together and not worry how many people are around the table. Making sure there are not three of us in the same room together. Thank you for your service and thank you to your family. You have done, you made a difference for kids, and thank you very much for all your work.
I'll go next. We're going in order here. I'm going to be really sad to see you go as you trot your way and laughing all the way to your car. So happy trails to you, my friend. And in that phrase is what I really mean is that the general public may or may not know that one of your children is very good friends with one of my children. So we've known each other for a very long time. And when you're board members with someone, you have to put your friendship aside. So it'll be nice to have my friend back. Like Becky said, we don't have to count how many of us are in the room anymore. So I can actually see you as a friend again. As a fellow board member, I've really appreciated your quiet, calm sense, especially Becky talking about those meetings of hundreds of people screaming, banging on windows behind us, all keeping our calm. And I was a brand new board member at that time. So it was very overwhelming. And you led us in a very good path. So thank you very much. I wish you well. Have a good one. Thank you so much.
I have spent some time on the board with you for the last 4 years, and I've noticed the amount of time you've spent, the time dedication you've put in. And I'm going to be brief, but I do think it's important for me to note that as a former teacher at Mother McCauley High School, where I was a teacher when Jillian was a student, because I had to bring that up. Mother McCauley is very proud of you. And I'm speaking for all of them.
Well, those are a few tough acts to follow right there. Jillian, you were the first person that I was chatting with during the appointment process and kept me well informed throughout that entire time, which of course was a challenging time for the district, and your leadership was appreciated. We're going to miss you here. I'll miss my table buddy right here. And I know you're on to great things. It was exciting to talk to you about some of the next steps in your life, and we'll be wishing you well, and we know you'll be close. So good luck.
Well, Mrs. Barker has a family of 4, and she's a successful professional. In spite of those 2 full-time commitments, she decided to run for the school board and take on a 3rd full-time job. And I think it's difficult in the first place to go through an election. It's continuously difficult to work hard to serve your constituents, and you did that well. I believe, and I've seen demonstrated, that you've done that because you believe in the positive power of public education. And you believe that D303 is a good place that can be better. And you've committed your time and energy to that. And it's something that I think everybody at the board table could see. I don't think that anyone who was elected in 2019 could anticipate what would happen in 2020 and beyond. And in spite of that, here you are. And not only did you stay committed during that period, you volunteered to take on the extra service work of serving as president during that tumultuous time. And I think between that and your efforts to steer the selection of a new superintendent and to facilitate parts of that process, you really have gone above and beyond in your commitment to D303. It's clear that you've been a champion for academic excellence in your time at the table. In fact, one of my first experiences with you was to watch you in that role here at the table. And so that is easy for folks who watch the board to notice and to understand about you. It's a job well done. You've done it well. Thank you.
No, Jillian, I just wanted to say thank you. As Mr. Lackner alluded to, you were the board president during the superintendent selection process. I just appreciated how you organized the interview process, how it was completed. But my wife and I will never forget. So we were on spring break. My district was on spring break, and we happened to be in Arizona. It was a Monday night. Neither one of us will forget. We're sitting there, and I'm starting to look at the clock. I'm like, okay, it's getting late. It's getting late. Why? Somebody should be calling me sooner or later, yes or no. And my wife and I are sitting together. We're just chit-chatting, and then my phone rings, and it's your number. and you start talking, and I literally remember looking over at my wife, and she's like, I'm like, she hasn't said anything yet. And then you offer me the position. It's a night that my wife and I will never forget. So I appreciate your leadership. I've appreciated your leadership since I've been in D303. But thank you for having belief in me, and believing that we could collectively do this together. I sincerely appreciate you. I appreciate that phone call that night. Just thank you. Thank you for what you've done, your leadership. Thank you very much.
So with that, a final thank you. And I don't want to put you on the spot, but if there's anything you would like to say, certainly can.
I didn't prepare anything and I don't have much of a voice, so I will be quick. When I say it's been a pleasure to serve this community, it has. It really has. There have been challenging times, for certain. There have been, 4-hour meetings. There have been hundreds of people here. But some of the challenges that have come up have helped me become a better person, so that I grew in those challenges. So even those pieces where times where it became a little bit difficult, I thank the community for continuing to talk to us, because those were important times that the community did need to talk to us. Everyone here has become very dear to me, and I don't know what I'm going to do yet on Mondays, because I haven't started my next part of my journey yet. So I may just show up because I don't know what else to do. But I will miss everyone's face every Monday. I will come and visit occasionally on different topics for sure. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jillian.
Thank you, Jillian. I would like to call Mr. Lentz forward, and then also Judge Hull as well.
So, everyone want to say enough?
Yes.
Fantastic. Well, before we begin, I just want to say thank you. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Clint Hall, 1985 grad, father of 4 D303 kids that went through. And as I was just saying, I can't say enough great things about D303. So thank you for all you do. And with that, I'll go ahead and swear you in for a new term. If you could please raise your right hand and then repeat after me. I state your name. Do solemnly swear that I will faithfully discharge the duties of the office of member of the Board of Education of Community Unit District 303 in accordance with the Constitution of the United States, the Constitution of the State of Illinois, and the laws of the State of Illinois, to the best of my ability. I further swear that I shall respect taxpayer interests by serving as a faithful protector of the school district's assets. I shall encourage and respect the free expression of opinion by my fellow board members and others who seek a hearing before the board, while respecting the privacy of students and employees. I shall recognize that a board member has no legal authority as an individual, and the decisions can be made only by the majority vote at a public board meeting. I shall abide by majority decisions of the board while retaining the right to seek changes in such decisions through ethical and constructive channels. As part of the Board of Education, I shall accept the responsibility for my role in the equitable and quality education of every student in the school district. I shall foster with the board extensive participation of the community, formulate goals, define outcomes, and set the course for District 303. I shall assist in establishing a structure and an environment designed to ensure all students have the opportunity to obtain their maximum potential through a sound organizational framework. I shall strive to ensure a continuous assessment of student achievement in all conditions affecting the education of our children in compliance with state law. I shall serve as education's key advocate on behalf of students and District 303 to advance the vision for District 303. And I shall strive to work together with the district superintendent to lead the school district toward fulfilling the vision of the board that they have created, fostering excellence for every student in the areas of academic skills, knowledge, citizenship, and personal development. Congratulations. Well done. And I also will say, after all the swearing in, including student council, county board members, park districts, and library districts, that is by far the longest one. Well done.
Can I get the paperback version of that?
We would love to have that.
Okay, moving forward now to item 5 on the agenda. Can I have a motion to adjourn Sine Die?
So
Mo-
moved.
Second.
Thank you, Mrs. Bell, and the second for Mrs. McCabe. Ms. Marsan, would you please take the roll call vote?
Yes, Mrs. Bell,
Yes.
Mrs. Fairgrave,
Yes.
Mr. Kuschert,
Yes.
Mr. Lackner,
Yes.
Mr. Lentz,
Yes.
Mrs. McCabe,
Yes.
Mr. McNally.
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0. And now moving on to item number 6, the motion to appoint our president, secretary pro tem. I would like to make a motion to appoint Tammy Marsan as president, secretary pro tem. Is there a second?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. McNally. Ms. Marsan, would you please take the roll call vote?
Yes, Mrs. Fairgrave,
Yes.
Mr. Kuschert,
Yes.
Mr. Lackner,
Yes.
Mr. Lentz,
Yes.
Mrs. McCabe,
Yes.
Mr. McNally,
Yes.
and Mrs. Bell.
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0.
Okay, we're now going to begin with the election of board president. Are there any nominations for board president?
I would like to nominate Mrs. Fairgrave.
Okay, Mr. Lackner is nominating Mrs. Fairgrave. Are there any other nominations for board president? And just one more time, are there any other nominations for board president? Okay, the nominations for board president are now closed, and the nominee is Mrs. Fairgrave. I'm now going to take a roll call vote. When I call your name, please state your choice for board president. Mr. Kuschert,
Mrs. Fairgrave.
Mr. Lackner,
Mrs. Fairgrave.
Mr. Lentz,
Mrs. Fairgrave.
Mrs. McCabe,
Mrs. Fairgrave.
Mr. McNally,
Mrs. Fairgrave.
Mrs. Bell,
Mrs. Fairgrave.
and Mrs. Fairgrave.
Mrs. Fairgrave.
Congratulations to Mrs. Fairgrave. She is our board president.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, we will now move to the election of the board vice president. Are there nominations for board vice president?
I would like to nominate Mr. McNally.
Okay. Are there any other nominations at this time? Okay, are there other nominations? Okay, the nominations for board vice president are now closed. The nominee is Mr. McNally. Tammy, would you please take a roll call vote? And when she does call your name, please state your choice for board vice president.
Mr. Lackner,
Mr. McNally.
Mr. Lentz,
Mr. McNally.
Mrs. McCabe,
Mr. McNally.
Mr. McNally,
Mr. McNally.
Mrs. Bell,
I'm supposed to say none, and I'm going to explain why. And Mr. McNally and I have already had this conversation. So, and I believe everybody else. So this is not a surprise, but for the general public, I want to make sure they understand my vote. The reason why is I feel that he's got a very demanding in the moment job, the same way as I feel a firefighter, FBI agent, police officer would be, and they need to be available at a moment's notice to their occupation. And I just feel that it doesn't make the right choice for how I see the objectives for that position. So it's nothing personal, but that's my decision.
Mrs. Fairgrave,
Mr. McNally.
and Mr. Kuschert.
Mr. McNally.
Okay. Congratulations to Mr. McNally. He will assume the role of board vice president. We will now move to the election of board secretary. Are there nominations for board secretary?
I would like to nominate Joe Lackner.
Okay. Thank you. Are there any other nominations? Are there any other nominations? Okay, the nominations for board secretary are now closed. The nominee is Mr. Lackner. Tammy, would you now please take a roll call vote? And again, when she calls your name, please state your choice for the board secretary.
Mr. Lentz,
Mr. Lackner.
Mrs. McCabe,
Mr. Lackner,
Mr. McNally,
Mr. Lackner,
Mrs. Bell,
Mr. Lackner,
Mrs. Fairgrave,
Mr. Lackner,
Mr. Kuschert,
Mr. Lackner,
and Mr. Lackner.
Mr. Lackner.
congratulations to Mr. Lackner. He will assume the role of board secretary. And now we will move to the election of the board treasurer. Are there nominations for board treasurer?
I'd like to nominate Justin Attaway.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other nominations? And finally, are there any other nominations? Okay, the nominations for board treasurer are now closed. The nominee is Justin Attaway. Ms. Marsan will take the roll call vote. And again, when she calls your name, please state your choice for board treasurer.
Mrs. McCabe,
Mr. Attaway,
Mr. McNally,
Justin Attaway,
Mrs. Bell,
Mr. Attaway,
Mrs. Fairgrave,
Mr. Attaway,
Mr. Kuschert,
Mr. Attaway,
Mr. Lackner,
Mr. Attaway.
and Mr. Lentz.
Mr. Attaway.
congratulations to Justin Attaway. He will assume the role of board treasurer. Okay, again, congratulations to our newly elected officers, and then also congratulations to this new board and Mr. Lentz in particular. Moving now to section 8.4 action, setting the 2023 to 2024 school board meeting calendar. Can I have a motion to approve the 2023 to 2025 school board meeting calendar?
So moved.
second,
Thank you. And the second for Mr. Kuschert. Is there any discussion at this time? Okay, Ms. Marsan, please take the roll call vote.
Mr. McNally,
yes,
Mrs. Bell,
yes,
Mrs. Fairgrave,
Yes,
Mr. Kuschert,
yes,
Mr. Lackner,
Yes.
Mr. Lentz,
Yes.
and Mrs. McCabe.
yes,
the motion passes 7-0. And now may I have a motion to adjourn to closed session for the purposes of first, collective negotiating matters between the public body and its employees or their representatives, or deliberations concerning salary schedules for one or more classes of employees, and the appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, performance, or dismissal of specific employees, specific individuals who serve as independent contractors in a park, recreational, or educational setting, or specific volunteers of the public body or legal counsel for the public body, including hearing testimony on a complaint lodged against an employee, a specific individual who serves as an independent contractor in a park, recreational, or educational setting, or a volunteer of the public body against legal counsel for the public body to determine its validity.
so moved.
Thank you, Mrs. Bell. Is there a second?
second,
Thank you, Mrs. McCabe. Ms. Marsan, would you please take the roll call vote?
Mrs. Bell,
Yes,
Mrs. Fairgrave,
Yes,
Mr. Kuschert,
yes.
Mr. Lackner,
Yes.
Mr. Lentz,
Yes.
Mrs. McCabe,
yes.
Mr. McNally.
yes.
motion passes 7-0. We will now move to closed session as of 6:35 PM.